Hey there, you can call me Cody with a K, and today I want to talk about this Bloodborne comic. Now, I think everyone has an artistic medium that they understand better than the other artistic mediums. Like, you look at someone like Red Letter Media or Your Movie Sucks or those channels, those guys know movies. I don't know movies so well. My favorite movies are like everyone's favorite movies. Empire Strikes Back, that kind of thing. I just like action movies. I like Shawshank Redemption. That's like the only non-action movie I like. Anyway, I think mine is video games. I understand video games, and I think I have a very refined taste, you know? And there are no video games that are like finer wine than Bloodborne and the Dark Souls series. Now, if you don't know, you've probably heard of Dark Souls. If you're not into games, you hear about how hard they are, how punishing. That's partially true. That's not why people like them, though. People do like them because they're challenging. But these are extremely well-crafted games that are very fun to play. And Bloodborne is grouped in with Dark Souls because they're developed by the same team. From Software. They also developed Dark Souls. Now, the thing about Bloodborne is it's horror. It's kind of a horror game, even though it's an action RPG, role-playing game. It's kind of a horror game, and it's got like Lovecraftian style horror in it, but with some also just like, you know, body horror, that kind of thing. But it's got like a Japanese twist on it because FromSoft is Japanese developers. Most great games were made by Japanese men. I'm just gonna say it. But the reason I want to talk about this is because my second great love is comic books. And when I saw there was a Bloodborne comic, I was very skeptical because Titan also published the Dark Souls comic, which I hated. Now, granted, I only read 2 issues. It may have become the best adaptation in the 3rd issue, but it was just not good. Now this, somebody involved, I don't know who. I don't know if it was the writer, who is Alice Cott, which that worried me. Because Alice Cott is kind of, he's one of those. You know exactly what I mean. He's kind of insufferable on social media. You know exactly what I'm talking about. He's just not fun to look into, you know. I go and I look at Walt Simonson's social media page, and it is fun. He just talks about Thor and comic books and stuff he does with his wife, Louise, and they go out and they talk about Thor. It's great. But like a lot of these current comics writers and pros are just I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. They're just insufferable. But this first issue, when I was reading it, I was like, okay. I was really worried because this weapon that's on the box art of the game, it's called the Saw Cleaver, and the whole point about it is the serrated edge is for hunting the beasts, and the bladed edge is for fighting like everything else. And there's 2 modes. You can swing it around like this. It's like real short range, but it's very fast. Yeah, and then the second mode is you flip this thing out, kind of like, it's flipped out on the cover, and then you can attack with the blade. It's much slower, though. One of the things that worried me was that they inconsistently draw this thing, right? So, like, it's correct here. You can see there's this crook, and then the blade curves in and to form like a little hole right there, so you don't cut your fingers off when you're using this thing. But if you look right here, that's wrong. If you were to flip the blade back, it would cut your fingers off, no matter which way you were holding it. And it's inconsistent. It's consistently inconsistent throughout this first issue. Like, I can't even tell if that's right. No, that's wrong, too. That's not how it's supposed to be drawn. Maybe, I don't know. But you got, like, there's plenty of enemies and things from the games, like, those are real enemies that you can fight in the game, especially the dogs. Everyone who's played a FromSoft game will tell you about the dogs. Dudes with hatchets. They've got the werewolf creatures. Then you meet one of the characters from the game, Jura, and his powder kegs. And I also got kind of worried because they put this kid in the game, and it contradicts some of the deepest lore. But this kid's like pale blood, and you need to. It's hard to understand. There's a lot to it in the game, but yeah, pale blood. It's Bloodborne, so blood's like a big deal. And they end up fighting this thing called the Blood-Starved Beast, which is a boss in the game, and it's actually one of the hardest early bosses, and it poisons the hunter. Like, it has poison. See, it's drawn correctly there. I don't know why they... Do they think it turns? Because there's not a pivot right there. That wouldn't make any sense. I don't know why this bugs me so much. Probably because, like, this is the weapon I main in the game. And it's a really fun weapon to use. But this thing vomits poison onto his face, and it melts his face off. And they really can poison you in the game. They start vomiting poison everywhere when you fight them. And then it says you died, just like in the game. I don't know how I feel about this. Part of me cringed, but part of me laughed. And like another part of me was like, oh, it's just like the game. I don't know how to feel about this panel. But, I don't know. Then when you die, you go to the Hunter's Dream and you meet the doll. Pretty much just like the game. The first issue was like, okay, fine. The second issue, though, this is where I was like, oh, wow. Now this might be worth reading. So it starts with the same stuff, but they're in the Forbidden Woods, which is like a mid-level area of the game. Yeah, I'd say it's about halfway through. The games are very non-linear, so it's hard to say. Well, there's a saw cleaver drawn correctly again. I wonder if I'll see another instance of it being drawn incorrectly in this issue. But they're walking through the Forbidden Woods. There's the Blood-Starved Beast again. And they go over a bridge, which the bridges look just like this. I know that's really minor, but they even have these like effigies, scarecrow things placed up around them. And they go over the bridge, and Hunter goes, stop. And sees this snake-headed man with a torch, which these are real enemies in the game. If you've ever played it and you've got to the Forbidden Woods, you'll remember these guys because they can kill you. Because they not only do they attack with all their snake heads and their torch, but they poison you as they do it. And he grips his weapon, approaches the back, that is clearly the snake man's back, and then takes the saw cleaver, again drawn correctly, the two loops, and then shoves it in the shoulder and rips through, which is a thing called a visceral attack. Now this is where I went, oh wow, they actually did their homework, because that's the easiest way to kill those dudes. Sneak up on them and use your heavy attack, which is a big overhand swing like that, and then do a visceral attack, which you just kind of rip through them. That's the easiest way to kill them, and it's like done perfectly right here. And then they meet the snake ball. He kills the snake ball with a Molotov, which is also pretty good in the game because like they're fairly weak to fire. Another thing, and it just keeps going, right? They go in this cave and then up this ladder to this clinic with Yusefka. That's a real shortcut you can take in the game. It's really hidden. So whoever put this in the book, I don't know if it was Alice Ka, I don't know who did it. Whoever put this in the book really knows their Bloodborne. Now, I came to this part and it kind of worried me because of the ongoing trends in comics right now. What are you, a man, a woman? With you I could never tell. Ugh. Says I am a hunter and looks vaguely androgynous. Made me cringe a little. But then I thought, this is a player character. The character in Bloodborne that you play as does not have a set like gender or name or anything. They're just the hunter. This is that in comic form. It doesn't matter who they are, because in the game, it also doesn't matter who you are. It's also kind of Lovecraftian for the humans not to matter. But that's without, Anyway, the hunter gets up and goes to the lamp, which takes him to the dream, which is how you get to the dream, the hunter's dream, in the game, Taka Gurman. And I'm just going to cut it off right there, because if you've played the game and you want to read this, there's a big spoiler at the end of this issue, and it makes me really look forward to the other two. If it keeps this level of quality, this was okay. If it keeps this level of quality and like adaptation of the game, I'll buy the trade as well. Like, it was great. That might be wishful thinking though. But the other thing that made me think of this was I read that Sonic comic, the new one to come out from IDW. I think the second issue just came out this week, maybe even today. But that Sonic comic was so boring, and like, it didn't use anything from the game. There's interesting stuff in the game. Like, I got it digitally because my wife really loves Sonic and she wanted to read that comic. And there was just nothing in the game about, there was nothing like this. No actual use of the mechanics in the game. Like, Sonic just runs real fast. Yeah, sure, that's a mechanic in the game, but anyone who is into like game design and knows about Sonic will tell you that it's about how the levels are built, it's about the enemies, it's about the boss fights. And there's none of that. I know Sonic's got this really weirdly deep history in comic books, because the Archie books from the 90s lasted until like last year, which is absurd. But it was not interesting. And like I said about the Dark Souls ones, and also not interesting. Not a good adaptation of a video game. Really boring. It's just a shame. I know there's God of War comics. I wanted to read them when I was younger, and I played through God of War 2, but I never got around to it. If anyone knows how those are, let me know, because I was always curious. What other... Oh, that's a good idea. I have other video game adaptations of comics. Are they here? Yeah, right here. Got Super Mario Adventures and The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past comic. Now, these are both really good adaptations. Maybe I'll talk more about this later. But, yeah, here's my bookshelf. A lot of this stuff's from my wife. Not the Boba Fett, though. Not the... Anyway. Yeah, maybe I'll talk more about these two later and about how they relate to the game mechanics. This Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past and Super Mario Adventures. I know there's also the Zelda manga. I have a few volumes of it over here from back in middle school. I remember those being really mediocre. Maybe I'll give them a reread. I'll just talk about video game adaptations of comics. Why not? Or wait, comic adaptations of video games. Oh, whatever. Oh. Well, I guess this is me signing out. Have a good one. Pick up that Bloodborne comic if you've played it. It's good. It's a good adaptation. All right. Say bye.